today's episode. Good evening, Shadow Explorers. I'm Raven Shadowmere, and welcome to Midnight Mysteries. Get ready for a true beach horror story that will challenge everything you believe about reality. What would you do if you could bring back someone you love, but the price was the life of an innocent? And what if I told you that the authorities in Santa Cruz have covered up the truth about one of the city's most intriguing cases? Newly uncovered documents suggest that the disappearance of 3 young people in 1986 goes far beyond a simple mystery. Behind this story lies an ancient cult known as the Children of the Moon, whose tentacles reach into the present day. Imagine the scene. A summer night at Seabright Beach. The full moon bathes the sand in silvery light as 4 carefree young people decide to camp by the shore. Sarah, Jake, Tom, and Mike are ready for a night of fun and roasted marshmallows. But what should have been a relaxing adventure transforms into a nightmare that would linger for decades. Strange lights dance in the sky. A shadowy figure watches from afar. And then, silence. When morning arrives, only Mike remains, haunted by memories that defy logic and tormented by unanswered questions. 30 years have passed, and now, the truth threatens to surface from the depths. A web of lies, macabre rituals, and a conspiracy that shakes the power structures of Santa Cruz is about to come to light. Prepare for a journey that will test the boundaries between reality and nightmare, where the line between the natural and the supernatural dissolves like footprints in the sand. A story that will make you question, how far would you go to uncover the truth? And more importantly, are you ready for the consequences of knowing it? But before we dive into this wave of terror, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. After all, you won't want to miss a second of this investigation that promises to reveal the darkest secrets of Santa Cruz. So, Shadow Explorers, are you ready to face the unknown? Because terror is about to emerge from the depths, and the sands of time are about to unveil their darkest secrets. The gentle summer breeze brushed against my skin as I walked along Seabright Beach on a night illuminated by the full moon. The scent of the sea mingled with the smell of burning wood, enveloping me in a vibrant energy. It was 1986, and the atmosphere was charged with expectations. I was there with my friends Sarah, Jake, and Tom, ready for a camping night that promised to be unforgettable. "Let's set up the tents before it gets dark," Sarah said, her cheerful voice resonating among the waves crashing on the beach. I had always admired her determination. She was a natural leader. Jake and Tom, on the other hand, were more interested in finding the best spot for the bonfire. "Hey, let's go over there, near the rocks. The view is better," Jake suggested, pointing to a space between the stones. Tom agreed, and soon, we were all moving, laughing and joking as we set up our tents. As soon as we finished setting up, "Let's have a snack. I brought marshmallows," I said, recalling the stash of sweets I had saved in my backpack. The idea of roasting them over the bonfire made me feel like a kid again. Once the bonfire was lit, we sat around it, watching the flames dance. "Who's going to tell a scary story?" Tom asked, winking at Sarah. He had always enjoyed teasing others, and it never failed to be fun. "I don't know if I want to hear a scary story right now." Sarah hesitated, but the sparkle in her eyes showed she was excited. "How about a mystery story instead?" "I heard that the beach is haunted," Jake began, his voice low, creating a suspenseful atmosphere. "They say that on nights like this, you can see strange lights in the sky. Some people say they are souls that haven't found peace." "Oh, here you go with your ghost stories." I laughed, but at the same time, a strange feeling started to creep over me. "That's just a tale to scare us." As we continued talking, I noticed that the waves were calmer, almost as if the beach was in silence. It was then that, to my surprise, I saw something, flickering lights dancing in the sky, as if they were moving in a strange choreography. "Are you guys seeing this?" I asked, pointing at the lights. The conversation stopped and everyone looked up at the sky. "They're just stars, Mike." Jake tried to downplay it, but his voice was hesitant. Something about those lights seemed different, as if they were calling our attention. The tension in the atmosphere thickened, and a chill ran down my spine. "Look over there," Sarah exclaimed, pointing to a figure in the distance, hooded and nearly invisible in the shadows. "Who is that?" The figure stood still, watching us. The joy of the night shifted into worry, and a heavy silence enveloped the surroundings. "Probably just someone camping too," I said, trying to calm the nerves, but my voice sounded strange, even to me. The figure remained motionless, just observing us, as if it knew we were there. "Let's stay close to the bonfire," Tom suggested, looking at the figure with suspicion. "It's better not to wander away." The idea of straying from the comforting light of the bonfire seemed like the best option. As we huddled together, the figure disappeared into the darkness, and the lights in the sky began to fade slowly. Laughter and jokes were replaced by an anxious silence. What had started as a night of fun and friendship was transforming into something unsettling. The feeling that something was wrong intensified with each passing moment. The night wore on, and we tried to ignore the tension lingering in the air. However, the memory of the hooded figure and the strange lights would not leave my mind. As the hours passed, sleep began to take hold of us, but a part of me knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. What had really happened that night? We didn't know, but the beach seemed to hold secrets it was not willing to reveal. The morning fog enveloped Seabright Beach as I waited for Emily. The sound of waves crashing on the sand seemed almost like a whisper, as if the beach itself was trying to tell a secret. I had always been drawn to mystery stories, but this one, in particular, carried an emotional weight that made everything harder. I wasn't just after a story. I was about to dive into an abyss of pain and loss. When Emily arrived, I could see the expression on her face. It was a mix of determination and vulnerability. She was Sarah's sister, one of the missing, and her pain was still palpable, even after 3 decades. "Mike, thank you for coming," she said, her voice a little shaky. "I don't know if I can do this alone." "You're not alone, Emily. I'm here to help," I replied, trying to convey a confidence that I honestly wasn't sure I possessed. "Let's go over what we have and see if we can find any clues that the police might have missed." We sat on a wooden bench by the beach, and Emily began to share her memories of Sarah. She was always the boldest of us. I remember how she wanted to explore every corner of the beach, as if she were on a mission. I never thought that could be the last time I'd see her. "Do you think she had any enemies? Anyone who might have wanted to harm her?" I asked, trying to understand if there was anything we could consider. "No, not that I know of. Sarah was loved by everyone. People adored her," she replied, her eyes welling with tears. "What pains me the most is that time has passed, and I still don't have answers. Just echoes of the past." As we spoke, a cold breeze swept by, and I recalled the sign I had seen the previous morning warning about cults. "Emily, have you ever heard about the cults that operated here in the 80s? I asked, watching her reaction. She frowned, confused. "Cults? No, I've never heard anything about that. The police never mentioned anything like that in the investigations. They always said there were no leads. I have a feeling this could be important. I'll investigate more about it. If there's any connection, it could lead us to answers," I asserted, feeling the adrenaline start to flow. "I want to help. If this means I can find any clues about what happened to Sarah, I'll do whatever it takes," Emily said, her voice filled with renewed determination. After our conversation, we decided to walk along the beach. The sand was cold beneath our feet, and the sky was beginning to light up with the colors of dawn. Looking at the horizon, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something much larger than we anticipated. As we moved further away, I spotted the old sign, covered in moss and nearly lost among the plants. "Look at this, Emily," I called, pointing. "Here's the sign about the cults." She approached, examining the worn words. "Cults? Sacrifices?" Her eyes widened. "Do you think this could have anything to do with what happened to Sarah and the others?" "It's a possibility. We need to find out more about these cults and who was behind them," I replied, as my mind started racing with ideas. "I'll review the police files and some old news articles. Who knows what we might find?" Emily nodded, but I noticed her expression was heavy with concern. "And if it leads us to something dangerous, Mike? What if we discover that there are still people involved in this kind of thing? I know it's risky, but we need to know the truth. We can't let fear stop us from seeking answers." "Sarah deserves that," I affirmed, feeling a surge of courage. The day had just begun, and I already felt we were about to unearth something that had been buried for a long time. The beach, which once seemed like a place of rest and peace, was now becoming a battleground against the ghosts of the past. With every step we took, I felt the weight of history accumulating on our shoulders. The search for answers was just beginning. On that foggy morning, the air was heavy with the anticipation of what we might find. Emily and I were back at Seabright Beach, our hearts racing with each step we took on the cold sand. The waves crashed steadily, as if whispering that secrets were hidden beneath the tranquil surface. As soon as we arrived at the spot indicated by the diary I found, the silence became almost deafening. "Do you really think we'll find something here?" Emily asked, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sky met the sea. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a determination in her that I admired. "We have to believe we will," I replied, trying to exude courage. "This diary talks about screams, rituals. Something happened that night, and we need to find out what it was." We walked a bit further, and suddenly something caught my attention. The marks in the sand, almost concealed by the waves, seemed to form a pattern. "Look," I pointed, crouching down to examine more closely. "These marks, they look like something was dragged." Emily stepped closer, her expression shifting from doubt to concern. "Mike, you're not thinking that." "Let's not be driven by fear," I interrupted, trying to keep calm. "We need to investigate." We explored the area, our feet sinking into the wet sand. The smell of the sea mixed with something denser and nauseating, as if nature was trying to warn us not to proceed. When we found a small cave, adrenaline surged through my veins. The entrance was covered in seaweed and appeared to have been untouched for years. "Should we go in?" Emily asked, hesitating. "We need to know what's inside," I replied, a mix of curiosity and apprehension overwhelming me. If there really was a cult, maybe they left something behind. With a nod, she agreed, and together we stepped into the darkness. The inside of the cave was damp and cold, and the light from our flashlights barely illuminated the path ahead. The walls were covered in green moss, and the rocks were slippery. The silence was almost tangible, and I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. "Mike, did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her eyes wide. "Hear what?" I asked, scanning the surroundings. That's when I heard it, a distant whisper, almost like a chant. A chill ran down my spine. "Let's go back," Emily suggested, her voice trembling a bit more. "Just a few more minutes," I pleaded, not wanting to give up so easily. "We need to find a clue." As we continued, we discovered a rudimentary altar in the center of the cave. It was made of stacked stones and covered by a tattered cloth. What appeared to be strange symbols were drawn around it, and the air was thick with a strong, metallic smell. It was as if time had frozen there. This is an altar," Emily whispered, horrified. "Mike, this is much more serious than we thought." "Yes, and we need to document this," I said, pulling out my phone to capture what was before us. As I did so, a sense of dread began to creep over me. "Emily, do you remember what old Jenkins said about the rumors of cults? This all could be connected somehow. She nodded, the expression of fear on her face mingling with determination. What if they're still here? What if someone is watching us right now? At that moment, we heard a noise of stones shifting, a distant echo that seemed to be coming from the entrance of the cave. Emily and I exchanged glances, terror reflected in our eyes. "We need to get out of here now," I whispered. With my heart in my throat, we began to walk back quickly, but the darkness seemed to close in around us. The whisper we had heard before was now louder, more insistent. "We can't stop," Emily exclaimed, her breath quickening. As soon as we exited the cave, the sunlight hit us like a balm, but the feeling that something was wrong did not dissipate. When we looked back, I saw a shadow moving at the cave's entrance, and my heart sank. "We need to tell someone about this," Emily said, her voice tense. "Yes, but who?" "No one will believe us," I replied, feeling the weight of what we had discovered. The sensation of being watched was not just paranoia, it was a reality. And we knew we were only scratching the surface of a much deeper and more threatening mystery. As the salty breeze from the ocean brushed against my face, Emily and I found ourselves in front of a small, abandoned cabin, where, according to rumors, a former member of the cult, the Children of the Moon, had been living. The sun was beginning to set, and the shadows were stretching, adding an even darker air to the place. Emily looked at me, her eyes filled with anticipation and a hint of fear. "Do you think he will tell us anything?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "I don't know, but we have to try. Any clue could be valuable," I replied, trying to convey confidence, even though my own heart was racing. I knocked on the dilapidated door, and it creaked open. The interior was dark and dusty, with furniture covered in white sheets that looked like ghosts. The twilight light filtered through the broken windows, creating an oppressive atmosphere. "Hello?" I called. "We're here to talk about the cult." A worn-looking man suddenly appeared in the doorway of one of the rooms. His hair was long and unkempt, and his deep, tired gaze reflected years of torment. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice hoarse and hesitant. "This isn't a safe place." "We need to know the truth," I insisted, "about what happened the night the young people disappeared." He hesitated, looking at the floor as if the answers were buried beneath the dust. Finally, he looked up at us with a resigned expression. "What do you want to know?" he asked, his voice now an echo of despair. "Everything. What do you know about the rituals? About what happened that night?" Emily interjected, her tone firm. The man took a deep breath, as if preparing to lift a weight he had carried for too long. "I was there, I saw. They performed rituals under the light of the moon, and that night, something went wrong. The sacrifice they wanted, it didn't go as planned." He paused, searching for the right words. "The youths were just part of the plan. They believed they needed fresh blood to appease the forces they worshipped." "Fresh blood?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Yes, they believed that by offering young lives, they could gain power and protection. But something got out of control. Screams, lights in the sky." He closed his eyes, and a look of terror crossed his face. I couldn't stay. I fled before everything became unbearable. "And what happened to the youths?" Emily pressed, her voice now trembling. "I don't know. They disappeared, and the people who were there that night." He hesitated, his gaze shifting from us to the window. "They were never the same. The cult grew stronger, and those who opposed them, well, they disappeared too." A heavy silence fell over us. Whatever had happened that night was bigger than we had imagined. "You need to help us," I pleaded, trying to keep calm. "If you know someone who is still involved, or if there's more information you can share." "I can't," he interrupted, his voice now firm. "They are always lurking. If they find out I spoke to you, I don't know what could happen." "But you have to," Emily exclaimed, her frustration evident. "We're seeking justice for those who disappeared. And for you too, if you continue living in fear." He looked at us, and a mixture of compassion and despair formed in his gaze. "If you really want to know, look for the old temple. That's where it all began. But be careful. They're still active. The threats you've received are not a joke." With that, he stepped back, disappearing back into the darkness of the house. We left the cabin, our hearts heavy with the revelation. The temple, the idea that there was still a place where those horrors were being practiced, was terrifying. "We need to go there, Mike," Emily said, determined. "We can't stop now." "I agree, but we have to be cautious. We need to plan this right," I replied, trying to contain the anxiety that was growing. As we walked back, the ocean breeze seemed to carry a warning. The shadows stretched, and the feeling of being watched did not leave us. I knew we were teetering on the edge of an abyss, and the truth we were about to uncover could be darker than we had ever imagined. The cold sea breeze hit my face as Emily and I approached Seabright Beach. The night was clear, and the stars shone brightly, but there was a palpable tension in the air. I looked at Emily, whose eyes were filled with determination, but also a pain I knew all too well. The search for the truth about the disappearance of her sister and her friends was about to intensify. "Do you really believe this vigil will work?" I asked, trying to understand what we hope to achieve. "Invoking forces we don't even know exist." Emily hesitated for a moment, looking towards the horizon. "If there's any chance of getting answers, we need to try, Mike. I can't keep living with this uncertainty. I can't accept that my sister and her friends just disappeared without a trace." Her voice was strong, but I could sense the fragility behind her words. We set up a small altar in the sand using candles and flowers we found nearby. Every detail mattered, and I could feel the electric energy in the air as we prepared. "I think this is what they did," I murmured, recalling the accounts we had found about the cult's rituals. They believed that with these sacrifices, they could invoke something greater. "Exactly," Emily replied, lighting the last candle. "But we're not here to perform sacrificial rituals. We're here to remember those who have passed and seek the truth." As the flames of the candles danced, we began to speak. I talked about the missing young people, about the pain their families faced, and about the injustices we uncovered in our investigation. Emily, in turn, started sharing memories of Sarah, her laughter, the happy moments they had spent together. It was a tribute, a celebration of lives that had been interrupted by forces we still didn't understand. "Mike, don't you think they're listening to us?" Emily asked, looking up at the sky. "I think, in some way, they can feel our presence here." I glanced upward. The night sky seemed more alive than ever. Then, something caught my attention. Strange lights began to appear, dancing in the sky. They weren't the usual stars we saw. They were pulsating lights, as if moving in response to our calls. "Are you seeing this?" I exclaimed, my heart racing. "Yes. What is it?" Emily looked visibly frightened, but also intrigued. The lights began to form a pattern, as if they were drawing a symbol in the sky. "It's like they're signals," I murmured, trying to decipher what was happening. The atmosphere around us seemed to shift. The breeze intensified, and a chill ran down my spine. "Mike, we need to be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with," Emily warned, her gaze fixed on the lights. But I was mesmerized, unable to look away. Suddenly, a thunderous sound echoed across the beach, as if the very earth was shifting. Emily took a step back, and I followed, feeling the adrenaline surge. "What was that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but we need to leave." "This isn't normal," I replied, already turning to exit the beach. But before we could take another step, a shadow emerged from the trees. A hooded figure stood still, watching us. Fear gripped me as the reality of what we were doing settled in. The cult we were trying to uncover hadn't vanished. It was still there, lurking, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. "Who are you?" Emily shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet of the beach. The figure did not respond, but its gaze was penetrating, as if it could see right through us. I knew we had crossed a line, and the truth we sought might not be what we expected to find. "Let's go now," I ordered, pulling Emily by the hand. Adrenaline coursed through our veins as we moved away, the echo of our own breathing mingling with the sound of the waves. The lights in the sky began to dissipate, but the sensation of being watched lingered, like a shadow that wouldn't fade. The night had changed forever, and the search for truth was now closer to becoming a nightmare. The lights danced above Seabright Beach, and the sound of the sea mixed with my quickening heartbeat. Emily was by my side, her eyes fixed on the hooded figure standing out among the shadows. My heart thumped frantically, and the adrenaline pushed me forward, while curiosity and fear intertwined. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though the tension in my throat made it nearly inaudible. The figure did not answer immediately, but the silence that followed was even more deafening than the waves crashing on the shore. "You really don't know." The voice, hoarse and deep, finally spoke. "I am part of what you seek, part of what you have always sought." The figure took a step forward, and the moonlight partially illuminated its face. It was a man I recognized, one of the pillars of the community, someone respectable who had been present at conferences and meetings about public safety when the young people went missing. You were there that night?" Emily asked, her voice almost a whisper, yet filled with indignation. The hooded figure nodded, an enigmatic smile appearing on his lips. "Yes, I was. And what happened that night was not an accident. It was a ritual, a necessary sacrifice to maintain the order and power we have in this city." His words hung in the air like a heavy fog. "You don't understand what's at stake. The power that we, the children of the moon, hold is what protects Santa Cruz from far darker forces." "You're saying the death of 3 young people was part of a plan?" I asked, the reality of that statement hitting me like a punch to the gut. He smiled again, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Not just that, it was a price to be paid, and now you have a choice. If you join us, you can reverse what happened. You can bring back those you lost. But in exchange, you will have to accept our path, our rules." Emily looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mix of horror and disbelief. "This is madness. How can you believe this is right?" "Right and wrong are concepts that don't exist when it comes to power," the figure replied, his tone growing more intense. "The truth is that you are on the brink of something much larger than you imagine. Santa Cruz is not just a city. It is a center of power, and we, the children of the moon, are those who protect it." "Protect? Or manipulate?" I retorted, anger rising within me. "How many lives have you sacrificed in the name of this protection? How many more will disappear if you continue with this?" The hooded man took a step back, as if my indignation surprised him. "You don't understand, journalist. The truth is that everyone has a price, and many have already paid. Many more will pay." The disappearances of Sarah, Jake, and Tom were not in vain. They were necessary. "We need to get out of here, Mike," Emily whispered, tugging at my arm. Fear was etched on her face, and I knew she was right. But the curiosity and the need for answers kept me rooted there. "And if we don't accept your offer, what will happen to us?" I asked defiantly. "That's simple. You will be seen as a threat. And threats are not welcome among the children of the moon." The air grew heavy, and the hooded figure began to retreat slowly, as if the darkness of the night was swallowing him. "Think carefully. This is your only opportunity to know the truth, and perhaps even change the fate of those you love." "Wait!" I shouted, but he was already disappearing into the darkness. Despair washed over me, and I turned to Emily, who was pale and trembling. "Mike, we need to go now. We can't stay here," she said, her voice shaking. I nodded, a cold feeling in my stomach reminding me of the danger we were in. As we began to drift apart, a scream echoed across the beach, slicing through the night like a blade. "Don't let it end like this." Emily's voice rang out, filled with desperation and determination, as the hooded figure vanished completely. Looking back, I saw only darkness, but the weight of what we had just uncovered still lingered in the air. The story of the missing people from Santa Cruz Beach was far from over. The questions only multiplied, and the true threats were closer than we had imagined. And so, Shadow Explorers, we come to the end of yet another journey through the dark corners of Santa Cruz. But is it truly the end? Or just the beginning of something much larger? The revelations we unearthed at Seabright Beach leave us with more questions than answers. An ancient cult operating in the shadows, sacrifices made in the name of a supposed greater good, and possibly local authorities involved in a massive cover-up. Think with me, if the children of the moon really exist and hold such power, how many other lives have been sacrificed on their altar of ambition? How many other Sarahs, Jakes, and Toms have had their fates sealed under the cloak of darkness? And what about you, dear viewers? What would you do if you were in Emily's place? Would you accept the tempting offer to bring back a loved one, even knowing the terrible price that others would have to pay? Or would you resist, risking everything in the nay? Before we say goodbye, I'd like to challenge you, my dear Shadow Explorers. Share in the comments, what was the most chilling moment of this story for you? And more, if you could investigate any unsolved mystery in your town, what would it be? Who knows, your suggestion might become our next episode. Remember, darkness can be frightening, but it is in the pursuit of truth that we find our true strength. Keep being curious, keep questioning, and never stop exploring the mysteries around you. Shadow Explorers, before we completely part ways, I have a special request for you. If this video made your heart race, if it sparked your curiosity, or simply entertained you, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Why, you ask? Because every like, every subscription is like a candle lit in the darkness, illuminating our path to bring more stories like this to you. And speaking of lighting paths, turning on the notification bell is like having a personal lighthouse in the world of mysteries. This way, you'll never miss an episode and will always be one step ahead in our investigations. After all, in the world of shadows, information is power, right? Oh, and if you're feeling that urge to share, don't hesitate. Share this video with your friends who love a good horror, suspense, or mystery story. Who knows, they might become new Shadow Explorers. After all, the more people investigating, the greater the chances of unraveling these enigmas, right? Now, let me ask you, my dear viewers, what do you think happened to Sarah, Jake, and Tom? Do the children of the moon really have the power to bring them back? Or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Share your theories in the comments. Who knows, your insight might help us unravel this mystery in a future episode. And speaking of the next episode, get ready and go ahead and click on that video that YouTube will recommend to you. This story is one of the best ever told here on the channel. This is Raven Shadowmere, your guide in the world of mysteries, reminding you that sometimes reality is scarier than fiction. Until the next Midnight Mystery, Explorers. And remember, in the shadows, we are never truly alone.